In the previous video, I had revealed we'll be looking at favicons next, but that was a little white lie, as we'll only be getting to that in the fourth video. Before that, we look in video 3 at the main differences and choices between the three image formats we use for website images, namely JPEG, PNG, and SVG. And in this video, I want to bore you for a few minutes to ensure you have a basic understanding of what a raster and a vector image is. This is not something you need to study slavishly, but it will help you understand how images are rendered and why we prefer the various image formats. Here we have two images that look exactly the same, but as you can see from the text, they are not exactly the same, as one is a raster image and the other a vector. I'm using Adobe Illustrator here to show you the difference between the two image types. Like my high school girlfriend used to say, well, shut up and show me. I'm not going to get all technical over the differences between these two images, but instead show you by zooming in, allowing you to figure out for yourself what's the difference. Beginning with the raster version, I zoom in, and as I zoom in, you'll think first the image begins to look fuzzy. But keep on zooming in, and eventually you'll get to the level that spooked Einstein, the subatomic particle level. No, not really, but quite similar if you sometimes wonder if our world isn't just a computer simulation. Let's focus. What we find is that the picture becomes pixelated. And this, Adam Sandler, is the world of pixels. Raster images are made up of these tiny little squares that we call pixels. We can say that raster images are pixel-based. Let's flip over to the vector image and do the same thing. Begin zooming in and zoom in some more, and along the way you'll quickly observe this image is behaving very differently than the raster image. In fact, it never appears blurry, and we never reach a point where we observe pixels. The reason is, vector images are, well, vectors, and without making it technical, all we need to know is that a vector image is a mathematical algorithm consisting out of points, lines, and curves. See? Not technical at all. I can zoom in all the way to 64,000%, and the lines are still tack sharp. The main difference then between raster images and vectors are, raster images are pixel-based. Vector images are lines, points, and curves generated by mathematical algorithms. Let's delve into our three image formats, namely JPEG, PNG, and SVG, to determine which of them are rasters and which are vectors. And how are we going to do that? Well, easy. Just like we did before, we take an image of each, zoom in, and see if it's pixel-based or whether it consists out of lines, points, and curves. We start off with our dear friend, the JPEG. And as we zoom in, we discover that JPEG is comprised out of pixels. And as such, JPEG is a raster-based image format. Next, our young cousin PNG, and what do you know? PNG is indeed a cousin of JPEG. It's also made up out of pixels. So far, both JPEG and PNG are raster images. Let's see for SVG, and as we zoom in, we discover not only is SVG not a brother nor a sister from another mother, but SVG is not even closely related to JPEG or PNG. SVG is a vector, and in fact, let me divulge a little well-known secret here. The V in SVG stands for vector. Scalability and resolution. Let's have a look at the last important key difference between rasters and vectors, and I'll show you this by bringing in our SVG image first. On the display, I have an image open in Photoshop that is 1920 pixels wide and 1280 pixels high. I chose this resolution purely because this is the standard resolution for HD display, and as this video is in HD, you'll probably be watching it in HD, meaning at 1920 pixels by 1280 pixels. As I drag and drop this SVG image in, you'll notice it's extremely small on the page. But pay attention what happens as I grab the image handles and scale it larger. You may not be impressed, but I am. This image went from a small tiny blob on my page to one that fits the HD resolution, and a big and, the quality of the image is still sharp, sharp, sharp. This is the benefit of vectors, as they are infinitely scalable and will maintain their quality. Even when discussing SVG, we do not mention concepts such as pixels and resolution, as vectors are not based on that. On the other hand, let's look at our raster friends. I'm going to be using the PNG version of the image for this demonstration, but the JPEG image will deliver the same results. Again, on the same display, I drag the PNG image in, and you can see it displays clearly, but super small. Let me drag it to a larger scale and observe as we create an unsightly disaster. Why did this happen? The reason is that raster images, like JPEG and PNG, are confined, limited, bound to their pixels. That small little image I brought in is only 128 pixels in both width and height. When I try to upscale it, the software tries to figure out how to do that by adding pixels into it, hoping to do its best, but as you can see, just doesn't work that well. Raster images are not scalable like vectors are, meaning that when you work with JPEGs and PNGs, you need to make sure your resolution is suitable for the display size you need. If you need an image that will cover the entire HD display here, you need one that is 1920 pixels wide and 1280 pixels high. If you don't need to cover the whole area, you can use an image with a smaller resolution. This is the sad restriction of raster images such as PNG and JPEG. They are confined by their resolution. So we've learned that raster images are pixel-based and bound to their resolution, whereas vectors are algorithms and infinitely scalable. So why not use vectors all the time? The answer is because our cameras are pixel-based. Think of your cell phone. Every time you buy a new cell phone, you check how many megapixels the phone's camera has. Images coming from any camera are pixel-based, and therefore raster. The second reason is that it's actually incredibly difficult to make super realistic vector counterparts from photorealistic images. Whew, mouthful. Look at this example of a photo which I've turned into a vector image within Adobe Illustrator. Though it can be done, it's often not very photorealistic. The third reason is that even when you achieve a close enough realistic vector rendering of a high detailed photo like I almost did here, the image file size will actually be larger than the raster file size. And because of these three reasons, JPEG and PNG, in many cases, still reign supreme. Here are our takeaways for today. Images can be classified as raster images or vectors. Raster images are defined by pixels and their display resolution limited by their dimensions. They are not truly scalable, and there is a loss of quality if they are scaled beyond their resolution. Examples are JPEG and PNG, two very popular formats for posting images online. Vector images are rendered using an algorithm producing images comprising out of points, lines, and curves. They can be indefinitely scaled, with no loss in quality as they are not resolution dependent. They are not suitable for high-detailed images such as photos or complex artwork because in most cases it may not display lifelike realism, and even if they do so, their file size will be bigger than those of JPEGs and PNGs. SVG is an example of a vector, and in fact SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphic. On to the next video we go, Sir Lancelot, where we shall be looking at the other important differences between the three musketeers, Sir JPEG, Sir PNG, and Sir SVG. Oh, by the way, this is JP here with Websites for Beginners.